All right. Hello, and thank you all so much for tuning into our March 2019 virtual info session. My name is Sarah Birch. I'm an admissions and recruitment specialist for the Brown School, and I'm really thrilled to be hosting today's virtual info session on our faculty. One of the reasons why the Brown School is such a strong choice for our students is because of our exceptional faculty. They are at the forefront of leadership in social work, public health, and social policy, and are leading this work as teachers, researchers, and practitioners. I really appreciate those of you who are watching this with us live, and if you have any questions throughout today's session, be sure to submit them, and we'll do our best to get to them by the end of the session. And if you're watching the recording of this live stream, I'm glad you found us. So I'm joined today by three special guests, Dr. Jessica Levy, Lorien Carter, and Barry Rosenberg. Welcome to each of you, and thank you so much for being here today. I'll allow each of you to introduce yourselves and just share a little bit about your roles at the Brown School, areas of teaching, research, or other interests and things that you're involved in within and outside of the Brown School.
Hi, I'm Barry Rosenberg. I'm a member of the faculty at the Brown School. Thanks for your interest in our school. We hope you're going to join us. My role at the school is I coordinate our MSW management program. I teach several courses related to leadership and management. I coordinate our Leadership at Brown program, which is an opportunity for students to work on and develop their knowledge and skill about leadership. And I also do executive education out in the community, working with nonprofit CEOs and senior executives trying to develop their skills as well. I have a broad interest in terms of leadership and management, some particular interest in nonprofit board governance and innovation. I look forward to talking with you today.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Lorien Carter. I'm an associate professor of practice here at the Brown School, and I teach lots of courses across our MSW curriculum. So I teach an introductory course that you will take if you're an MSW student at the Brown School, unless you're an advanced standing student. It's called Social Work Practice with Individuals, Families, and Groups. I teach social work practice with youth in families. I teach a program design course called Developing Programs in Health and Social Service Settings. And I also teach a really important skills lab called Self-Care for Helping Professionals, where we really kind of build the skills for you to be buffered against all the occupational stresses that can happen for social workers as they enter and remain in the profession. So I obviously have an interest in working with adolescents. It's what I did as a practicing social worker, which I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about here in a few minutes. But I really enjoy meeting new students. I do a lot of prospective student visits. I also have a pretty high advising load of students who are interested in children, youth, and family, school social work, and then working more broadly in nonprofits.
My name is Jessica Levy. I am a senior lecturer here at the Brown School in the program, the public health program. So I also teach classes to most of you who will be coming in. I teach a program planning, implementation, and evaluation course. I also teach global reproductive health and a course on gender, poverty, and global health. So my interests are also my interests are globally oriented and mostly focused on reproductive health specifically. That said, I'm actually also the chair of the global health curriculum, and so those of you who are interested in doing global health work will have a lot of interaction. So I look forward to meeting you and talking about that today.
Great. Thank you all so much. Before we dive into some questions, I do want to just make a few quick announcements for those of you who are applying or have been admitted to the program. First, I'd like to share that Admitted Students Weekend is coming up April 5th and 6th. So if you are admitted and thinking about checking out the Brown School before you make your decision, this is a perfect opportunity to do so. You'll learn so much about our school and get to chat with faculty, current students, and learn about all the resources here during that weekend. So you can go to our website to learn more and register. For all other admitted student resources, you can find those on the Brown School's website as well. You can go there to confirm your intent to enroll, find financial aid resources, funding opportunities, and other updates. And for those who are still thinking about applying, we are still accepting applications on a rolling basis now. And if you submit now, you'll receive your admission decision within 4 to 6 weeks of submitting your application. So now we'll go ahead and get started with questions. We had a question submitted beforehand that asked about the things that you have done to take an active part in getting involved in your respective fields, and I think that really ties in nicely to the first question that I had, which is, how did you find your way to the Brown School, and what was your path to becoming a Brown School faculty member? And we can start with Barry.
Great. So my pathway is kind of actually interesting. I was recruited by a student. My background is in nonprofit management. I was the CEO for many years of a rather large organization. And I had a practicum student who seemed to think I had something to offer. She actually introduced me to the then chairman of the management specialization, who brought me on as an adjunct in 1997. So I taught 1 or 2 courses over the years that I was actively working in the field, and then after I retired, I joined the faculty full-time.
Great, thank you. Hear from Lorien.
So I also have an interesting path to becoming a Brown School faculty member. I was a student at the Brown School. I graduated more than 20 years ago. And Barry, I don't know if you remember this, but I took a class with you. So Barry was one of my instructors. So then I had a really active social work career. So I spent 10 years working as a social worker, doing direct service with teenagers. I started my career as a high school social worker, and then I coordinated a teen pregnancy clinic here in St. Louis. And it was through my work as also as a practicum student field instructor that I got more interested in supporting current students at the Brown School, and joined the faculty as an adjunct instructor first, and then the opportunity to kind of pilot a full-time teaching track. Faculty member came across my plate in 2007, so I joined the Brown School faculty full-time in 2007. As you'll hear a little bit from myself and from Barry, as professors of practice, we stay connected to the practice field, so I still keep a foot in practice, but my biggest footprint now is as a Brown School faculty member.
I also have an interesting path here, but if you don't mind, I'd actually like to focus on why I stayed here.
Sure.
So I came also originally as an adjunct, and when I first came, I'll be honest, I thought global health, who does that in the middle of the country in St. Louis? And I was a little, there was some trepidation there on my part, and to my lovely surprise, the Brown School was not only a great place to work on global health issues, and not only do we have a wonderful faculty doing really interesting things all over the world, but I found that the faculty and the students were so interested in this work and so supportive of the work that I am doing, and that those of us who work in global health are doing, that I decided to stay and really help the program develop and grow. And so that's what kept me here. The faculty, the students, and being able to really dive into what I do globally, or on the global level, I should say, was a real pleasure. So
that's great. Thank you all so much. You all mentioned in your introductions that you all teach courses, a lot of courses, and so I'd love to hear just a little bit about what your hopes are for the classroom experience as a teacher. Barry, you can start with you.
So I'm a real big advocate, and I think virtually all of our faculty are, of highly engaged classrooms. Trying to keep lectures to a minimum. I actually use video lectures before the class so we can get that out of the way in conjunction with readings. We do a lot of case-based work where we're taking a look at organizational management and leadership issues from either from my experience or from other cases that are available, and really try to pull them apart. And so move from understanding and maybe being able to define concepts to really trying to think, how do we apply them? How do we identify how they're playing out in situations and use them? I love debate. I love students who challenge. We really believe in pushing against each other in classroom because that helps sharpen our thinking, both the students' thinking and mine. So the more activity, the better in my classroom.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. In my classroom, I think that one of the biggest philosophies I use is really bringing in my experience, bringing in the experience of my guest lecturers to ground the theory and the lessons in what is going on in the real world, what's going on in our practice and in our research. So a lot of the work that I do, we also use case studies. I am very, I also think that making sure that the students are active and having discussions, also debate, is important, and not just, it's not just about being pedantic and talking at my students. I really enjoy having conversations, and whether that be through case studies or through interactive conversation, that to me is probably the most important approach.
So, and I would just echo both of what Jessica and Barry said in terms of the interactiveness of my classroom. Most of my direct service classes, we have simulations, sometimes called skills rehearsals or role plays, where we really practice the skills that you will need as you enter the field. So we'll do mock sessions, a mock assessment session with a teenager, with a coach or observer, and with me and my teaching assistant as kind of roving observers. So you get a chance to practice those skills before you then get into the field and you're working directly with a teenager. So a lot of interaction in the classroom. The other thing that I think is really important to mention about the classroom, and I know it's true in not just my classes, but in many of the classes at the Brown School, is that we come in with a wealth of knowledge and we bring our practice experience in, but so do the students. And so I really consider our classroom to be the mutual responsibility for learning that doesn't just come from me or my teaching assistant being an expert in that area. Our students come in with a lot of experience. There's something that will bring you to the Brown School, and for many of our students, they've been out in some form of the field for a few years, and you've done some of this work. And there's something about that you want to, that you want to learn how to do that work better or differently, or more effectively, more efficiently. But you have knowledge and you have experience in the field. So we always, in my classes, have time for you to talk about what has been your experience with this issue. What work have you done in this area? How have you experienced this population or this setting? And we take full advantage of learning from you as much as we provide learning to you.
That's great. Yeah, I love that, and sounds like our audience really likes that too. So I appreciate hearing that, just having an engaged classroom, and that's very much, I think, quintessential to the graduate school experience, is that you're not just sitting there in a lecture, you're engaging in conversation, and the classes are long, but for a reason, so that you can really dive into the topic and subject matter.
And so many of our students come from very diverse backgrounds,
Yeah.
Both in terms of what they've done, where they've come from, different cultures. They're bringing those perspectives to the kinds of issues that we're dealing with. And some of them are actually returning students who have been out in the field for many, many years and bring just an entirely different perspective to the subject matter we're dealing with.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So in addition to your roles as instructors, you each hold chair positions at the Brown School. Jessica, you mentioned being the Global Health Chair, so we can start with you. You talk a little bit about what that role entails and specifically how it shapes your interactions with students. So I'll start with Jessica.
Sure. So here at the Brown School, our global health specialization in the public health program is the second largest specialization that we have. And as Barry just mentioned, we have a lot of students coming in from all over the world, all parts of the world. And I see my role really in addition to just interacting with these students and making sure that students are placed well in our international practicums, which is a major benefit to being in the global health specialization if you're an MPH student. I see my role as really drawing the connections between what's going on here domestically, even within St. Louis, but domestically in general, to what's going on across the world and vice versa. So I see it, I think it's one of the things that I love about our school is that we prioritize and highlight those lessons that we can learn. So what can we take from here to bring there and vice versa? And as everyone has said, because of the experiences coming into the classroom and because of the vast or the different students' backgrounds and what have you, we're constantly learning from one another. So I think that connection often gets lost when we think about global health, and it's been a lot of fun to draw those connections here.
So I chair the MSW Foundation Curriculum. So that means the entire first year of an MSW program. We have standard courses that we have multiple sections of. Each of those courses has a lead instructor, and then I support the lead instructors for each of the 8 courses that make up your first year at the Brown School. So this means I have a lot of interaction with all of the faculty that you will be encountering over the first year. And it means I know a lot about the curriculum. I know how all of the curriculum is designed to integrate to teach a core set of competencies during that first year of the program. And I kind of understand how the classes are supposed to fit together. And I support the faculty who are making sure that they really do fit together in those ways. And in terms of how that means you'll interact with me, when you join the Brown School next fall, you will meet me at orientation, where I will give you an overview of the first year curriculum. And I will talk with you a little bit about how it may not be the most fun part of your time at the Brown School, because there are a lot of standard components that might not be what you think you're interested in, but that they really do come together to give you a strong foundation in the profession, which we think is really important. And then I also will be available to you as you go through your first year of the program, as you encounter challenges or strengths or opportunities in our curriculum. I can meet with you and talk with you about what you're appreciating about our curriculum, and then also where you think that there's room for us to improve or grow. I hold listening sessions on a pretty regular basis to check in with students to kind of get a little bit of a rear view mirror perspective. So in your second year, asking you to look back on your first year and tell us how the curriculum really supported you as you moved into your first field placement and beyond. So I spend a lot of time talking with students about all of the first year courses.
Sure. So I chair the management specialization. If you're familiar with our curriculum, students pick a primary concentration. It could be mental health, could be economic and social development. And then we offer 6 specializations that fit into each one of those concentrations. Management, we also do social entrepreneurship, research, social policy. And I teach the central course of that. It's called Management and Leadership of Organizations. If you decide to do the management specialization, you have no choice but to take my class. And then I also teach a course, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit more, called Brown Consulting. And I'm also the lead teacher for leadership at Brown, which includes a 1-credit course on leadership. The role of specialization chair means I spend a lot of time related to curriculum development, and we have been doing a lot to build our curriculum to make it more robust, to make it deeper, to make it more relevant, and some really exciting things going on curricular-wise in terms of management and leadership. Because all of the faculty who teach in our specialization are adjuncts in addition to myself and one other person, I spend a lot of time looking for people who bring real-life experience and very current experience, as well as a depth of understanding of the theory and the knowledge that's involved in the work. And then I also do some stuff in terms of direct student work. Leadership at Brown has a series of what we call leadership labs that I organize, which are informal discussions around leadership. And I also work with a group of students called the Betties, who are management scholars who develop additional programming, so that we're offering sort of as many opportunities for students to find their way to explore what management and leadership mean for them.
That's great. Thank you all. And what I hear from all 3 of these awesome faculty members is that they're really here to support you and to ensure that the curriculum and the things that you are taking part in while you're a student at the Brown School are really going to set you up for success, that you're getting the most valuable use of your time while you're here, and that what you're learning is super relevant to what you're interested in and what is actually happening in the world, so that you can take that with you after you graduate and make some real impact. And speaking of impact, I wanted to talk about how much we value using evidence and evidence-based research and moving that into practice, because it's really critical in helping our students prepare for their future. And so Jessica does a lot of evaluation work that has served to provide guidance to organizations and communities all around the world. And so I'd love to hear, what does that look like for you as a faculty member? Maybe speak to a little bit about also what research and publishing looks like, and then how can students get involved? We had a question from a student who unfortunately missed the deadline to apply for master's research fellowships. So what are some other ways for them to express interest in getting involved in evaluation or research work?
Sure. Well, that's really one of my favorite things about teaching and being here. So I do a lot of work outside of Brown in research, evaluation, and practice. I just wrapped up a big project in Jordan, actually, integrating gender into a national family planning project, and I'm also working on wrapping up a Lancet series on looking at how gender influences health outcomes. And in both of these projects, I had a number of students working with me. I had one student actually go with me to Jordan and do what we call group model building, which if you come here, I'd be excited to introduce you to. And on the Lancet series, I had almost 8 students actually working with me to do some of the background research and some of the writing, and they ended up being co-authors on a couple of the papers that we did. So what does that look like? I think all of us, whether we do practice research here at the Brown School, often we have projects that are coming up, and my advice would be to go to the professor that you're interested in or looking at the work that they do, and just ask, what are they doing? What might they have available? How can you get involved? You don't necessarily need to come in on a fellowship or have that set up. We always have our doors open. We're always ready to talk. And that's great, because what ends up happening then is we bring what we're teaching in the classroom out into the field, and vice versa. What's happening in the field, we bring into the classroom, and so often the students are involved in both of those processes. So that's been really exciting and fun.
Great. Anything from a social work perspective that either of you would like to add?
One perspective, and I think you'd find that many of the faculty are really kind of open to this. So I don't do an active research agenda, although I do some writing and I do some speaking on various kinds of things. But I think independent studies are opportunities, and I would just give you one example from my experience. I had a student who had actually been a founder of her own nonprofit, a rather significant international nonprofit. She came back to Brown to develop greater skills. And she did an independent study with me on board governance, and at the same time served as the TA for my training program for CEOs in the community. So she had an opportunity to see that from multiple perspectives and develop her knowledge and skills. So I think there are a lot of different ways to involve yourself in research and applied learning while you're at Brown.
That's great. And something that I have heard from multiple faculty too is that they are so willing, like Jessica said, to hear what you're interested in, and all it really takes is you reaching out to them. They're not going to know to reach out to you, so just make those connections and reach out on your own, because they're there, and that's what they're there for, is to hear you. So one other question now that I have for Lorien and Barry, you both bring several years of experience working as social workers and as practitioners in your respective fields. So I'd love to hear, as professors of practice, how does that work show up in the classroom? And Lorien, we can start with you.
Sure. Yeah, so being a professor of practice means I do keep a foot in practice, and I do a couple things in that arena. I do some consulting with a consulting firm that is focused on building organizational strength. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing in my program development and implementation course, I'm also helping nonprofits think more intentionally about the impact that they want to have and how they build their programs around that impact, and figuring out what to measure and how to measure all of the various elements that they could be measuring in terms of outcomes for their clients. My other foot in practice is with youth serving organizations. So I do a lot of trainings for youth serving organizations in best practices for working with teenagers, since that is my passion area. And every now and then I get the really, really amazing opportunity to work directly with teens. It's the thing I miss the most. By being a faculty member here full-time, I don't have a full-time practice with teenagers anymore, but I do get invited to do workshops and trainings with teens every now and then. And in fact, I'm getting ready to do one in a few weeks that I've invited one of my advisees to join me on. So I'll be doing a question and answer, information about myths and realities about sex and relationships for high school seniors. And a student that is one of my advisees will be coming with me to co-lead that session, which is really a lot of fun. I also write curriculum and am a trainer for the Teen Outreach Program, which is a nationally replicated evidence-based youth development and teen pregnancy prevention program that's headquartered here in St. Louis, but it's a national program. And a few years ago, when the curriculum writing project came about, there was a student who had taken the Teen Outreach Program Skills Lab that I teach, who was really interested in curriculum writing. And so together we co-wrote about 20 of the sexual health lessons that made it into this new curriculum that the Teen Outreach Program is using. And so it's a really great opportunity for a student to get to work with me, kind of on the ground, doing the work that it will be directly impactful to young people across the country. So really neat for me, and also a really great opportunity for a student. So those opportunities kind of come up sporadically, so it's really important, as Sarah mentioned, to let us know what you're interested in, so that when we have those opportunities, we know how to kind of get in contact with you and what you might be interested in doing with us.
That's great. Barry?
Yeah, so it's a little bit harder for me to continue to be active in my practice because I ran a large organization, and school doesn't exactly give me time to continue to do that on the side. But I do a little bit of consulting, strategic planning, board development, general management, and try to bring that, as well as the experiences from my career, into the classroom. At times that offers an opportunity maybe to partner with one of our students in terms of an engagement. But we also do something that is sort of connected. We have a course we call Brown Consulting. It's designed to be an integrative course for the management specialization, and a team of students work with me over the course of a semester to do a major consulting job with one organization where we assess their full range of management policies and practices, and then develop recommendations which are presented for adoption to the organization's board of directors. It's a really exciting course. And it's very, very hands-on, and the impact of those courses have been quite significant in the organizations that have participated in them.
That's great. Thank you. So now I think I am going to take a minute to ask some questions from the audience. It looks like we've been getting quite a few as we've been chatting so far. So the first one, this one is for Lorien. Is the self-care for helping professions course available to fit into our schedule, even if we have a concentration or specialization already in place?
Absolutely. So what's really great about our skills labs is that those are 1-credit skills labs. So it's very easy for you to fit in a 1-credit skills lab. It can count as an elective, but it would maybe go above and beyond a specialization, but that's very easy to do within the structure that we have for tuition, and also it meets for just half of the semester as opposed to the whole semester. So it's very easy to fit that in.
Great, thank you. The next question, when entering the Brown School, are there procedures in place to lessen the culture shock or graduate school versus undergrad culture shock, especially for those coming from outside the St. Louis area?
I think that's your question, Lorien.
Sure. So, there obviously will be some culture shock. Graduate school is rigorous. If you're coming from outside the St. Louis region, I think one of the things to know is that St. Louis obviously is a great, I came to the Brown School not having lived in St. Louis before. I thought I would be here just a few years and I would go back to the East Coast where I grew up. And more than 20 years later, here I am. And so I think that happens a lot. There's a lot of really amazing things happening in St. Louis. The cost of living is amazing. There's more free things to do than you can possibly imagine. So some of it is just taking the time to enjoy the St. Louis region and really get to know all of the resources that are here. And in terms of just kind of getting used to the Brown School program, I think our orientation is designed to really kind of set you up for success. We wrap a lot of resources around you in terms of advising. So you will have an academic advisor and a faculty advisor and a field placement practicum advisor during your time here, and as well as a lot of informal mentoring and advising from faculty members who have these open door policies when you are kind of overwhelmed at the middle of the semester. We certainly understand that and can kind of help you come up with strategies that will work.
That's great, and I'm glad that you mentioned orientation too, because I think that's a wonderful time for everyone to kind of come together at the very beginning of your journey here at the Brown School and spend an entire week really getting to know what the Brown School is all about, and just meeting folks in your cohort and kind of everyone getting on a level playing field to understand what is that we're about to get into as graduate students now. The next question was learning community like, and are cohorts tight-knit and diverse?
Go for it.
So it's an interesting question. I think it's hard to answer that really from a faculty perspective. It's a better come in for admitted students weekend and talk to students who are actually here. I know definitely people form their groups and form their close friendships, and those are intense. There are a lot of group projects which give opportunity for students to really work with each other. On the other hand, I think after the foundation program, there's a tremendous amount of diversity in where our students are going, how they're putting together their program, how they're integrating practicum. And so I think that the way to think about that is have a great base of core students and friends, but really explore the range of the possibilities that you can meet in a pretty large program.
Yeah. And I do think it's important to note that there is diversity in the cohorts, and not only diversity in terms of race and economic standing, but also, again, in terms of where people are coming from, both in terms of their experience, but also quite literally their geographic birthplaces. So I think we can say that without an issue that there is a lot of diversity here.
Absolutely. The next question, do class discussions tend to run past designated times? This is a very specific question. Do students carry on discussions outside of the classroom?
Well, my class generally ends at 12, right at lunchtime, and I think people are rushing to get something to eat. But I definitely think that there's a lot of passion within our students. I think conversations definitely continue to go on, and certainly conversations about things like racial equity, the kinds of issues that we're facing in the city of St. Louis and in our larger nation. Those are very, very animated conversations that I think go on all the time at Brown.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many times I have students who will say things like, I went home and I was talking about this with my partner, or, oh, we were just having a conversation about this, and we've thought about it more, and this is what we think. And so I think it's very safe to say that the conversations go on beyond the classroom, which is exciting because we're getting people thinking.
Yeah.
So
I actually create a formal mechanism for conversations to happen virtually. So in my course, I use our course management discussion board thread very purposely. So if there's anything going on in the local or state or national realm related to teenagers, if there's an article in the New York Times related to teenage teenage brains. I post that on our discussion board, and so class discussions sometimes start in class and then move into our discussion board if it seems like it's taking more time than we have for that topic. And they sort of get a life of their own, which is fun. That virtual conversation continues all semester about a TV show that portrayed social workers incorrectly, and how we would really like to do this if we were, if they showed us what we really get to do, what that would look like. So we have a lot of fun conversations that definitely go beyond, that start in the classroom and then go beyond the classroom.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Next question is for Dr. Levy. You mentioned that International Practicum is part of the MPH curriculum, more specifically part of the global health curriculum. Can you shed some more light on that? Does it mean that all MPH students need to do a semester abroad?
Yeah, great question, and I'm happy to clarify that. So only global health specializers do an international practicum, and in fact, it's not a semester abroad. It is 360 hours, correct? Mm-hmm. Something like that. I should know that. And so only global health specializers. That said, if you're a global health specializer and you've done a lot of work in the global south and low and middle income countries, then we talk about that and decide what might be a good fit for you domestically, assuming that that's what you'd like to do. So that only applies to global health specializers.
Great.
And global health specializers get first dibs on those placements.
Great. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So if you are interested in doing global work and want to do your practicum abroad, then you will need to declare a global health specialization as an MPH student. The next question, are there official meetings for students to have some interactions with some of the faculty members? Yes. And anyone can take that and explain what that looks like. Barry, if you want to explain that a little bit.
So I think there are, right from actually Admitted Students Weekend, there are opportunities during orientation. There are lunches with the faculty, so you have an opportunity to meet some people you might be interested in. I know certainly in our concentration there are multiple programmatic opportunities that I'm involved in with students where we have an opportunity to meet. And I meet with a lot of students about what their interests are in management, advising them on course selection. Some of them are interested in a joint degree with our business school. We talk about what that would look like. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, as part of our leadership program, we offer a monthly informal lunch called Leadership Lab. It has a topic, but I'm there. We have a real interaction. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. And I think the real issue, and Lorien mentioned this before, is it's really up to you. If you go out and seek it, the faculty are absolutely wide open for that.
And something else to note too is that you'll have a faculty advisor as well while you're here, so that's another kind of formal relationship that you will have during your time at the Brown School, to have some more kind of official meetings with a faculty member face to face and kind of just talk about what your interests are. I don't know if any of you want to add it.
Yeah, just to add, I think the formal piece is important, but I also think it's really worth mentioning the informal piece, which is here at WashU, unlike I would say a lot of other schools, a lot of graduate schools, we have not necessarily an open door policy per se, but often many of our professors do have their doors open, whether literally or figuratively, to speak with students. So, it is a matter of just shooting an email or coming and knocking on our door, and I think that's really special and unique to the Brown School.
My door is always open and there's always candy, so
hey, there you go.
People can show up.
Perks for sure. Awesome. The next question, how interdisciplinary is the MSW program? I'm interested in clinical work, but wonder if there would be an opportunity to take classes or conduct research in something more public health related. Lorien, would you like to take that one? Yeah.
Sure. So I think, yes, it is interdisciplinary in lots of ways. So we do, if you're in the full MSW program, you do 2 practicum placements. The first is a 360-hour placement that we call your foundation placement, and then your concentration placement, which is 600 hours. And so usually that concentration placement is the one where if you're interested in clinical work, you're going to want a clinical practicum. A lot of times those clinical practica lead to jobs in those same agencies doing clinical work. So it's a really nice leverage point there. But your first practicum would be a perfect opportunity to choose something that is a little bit more researchy or a little bit more public health or in the health arena. And so you have lots of flexibility with that. I know one of the other questions was around, how much agency do students have in choosing practicum? And I know there'll be another virtual information session focused on that. But we give you a lot of choice. There's a lot of support for that through our field education office, but students get to choose their practicum, and they're welcome to choose one that's slightly more broad than they think their career interests are, so that they can be, again, be more well-rounded and really learn a little bit more about the entire profession, not just the clinical area.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for answering the question too about practicum placement. You have total agency in choosing that. The next question is about the size of the cohorts. So size of the MSW program compared to the size of the MPH cohort, and what is the student to faculty ratio. So our MSW program cohort size is a little bigger than our public health cohort. Last academic year, we welcomed just around 280 MSW students to the program and around 80 public health students. And then our student to faculty ratio is 11 to 1. So as we've been sharing, a lot of opportunity to engage and connect with faculty. And if any of you would like to shed more light on that, just cohort size and kind of what that feels like in the Brown School.
I think this doesn't necessarily have to do with the faculty-student ratio, but I think it's also important to say that within the classroom itself, the most you're going to have, at least in the MPH program, is going to be around 20 to 25 at most, and that would be in more of the foundational classes. But in the electives and the TPS courses, which I'm sure we can get into if need be, you might have 10 to 15 students, so it's very interactive.
So we are starting to come close to the end of our time. There are so many wonderful questions, and if we don't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll get to those when we can. I'll ask one more question, which I really love, before we kind of wrap up here, but what is the rationale for combining social work and public health in one school? Which that's my favorite question, and I'd love to hear all of your takes on that.
You want to start?
Yeah. Gosh, what's the rationale? Maybe you should start.
I can start, but
Okay.
please jump in. Okay. So I think the rationale is that the problems that each of these professions are taking on are interrelated. You have to understand kind of the epidemiology or the prevalence rates of mental health conditions or physical health conditions to really do good clinical work to address those. And so I think really recognizing that we look at the problems differently, but we're all trying to tackle the same problems. And having faculty from both programs in this building means that we do a lot more transdisciplinary discussions. Our research is, and our practice and our teaching is informed by each other in some pretty neat ways.
Yeah, and not just that, but our students are interacting and informing their own practice and research. And just to say, in the MPH program, we really are focused on the social determinants of health, which is a term that we will you will remember by the end of this. And that means really looking at kind of the more upstream causes to some of the health outcomes that we see. So it is absolutely interrelated.
Yeah. And if I could add just one other piece of that, I think a hallmark of the way the Brown School looks at any of the problems and any of the issues and any of the populations you're interested in is a systemic perspective. We have very strong skills around systems analysis and understanding how complex systems shape outcomes, whether it's anything from management in a nonprofit organization to a global health crisis, and therefore having the capability of looking at those problems from a larger systemic as well as a specialized focus, I think is what makes the Brown School very, very unique and very, very strong.
Yeah, I think something worth mentioning there too is that we now have this Master of Social Policy program that really serves as a catalyst for bringing social workers and public health practitioners into the policy space so that we are making impact on that macro kind of systemic level. So to wrap up, I think I'd like to pose one last question for you all, and that is, what is your advice to an incoming graduate student? And we can start with Barry, and then each of you can kind of give your piece of advice.
So I would say 2 or 3 things I'd like you to think about. One is to be open to the experience. You may come in here with a very, very clear idea of what you want to do. You may come in here not really sure at all. But I think that the range of opportunities that's open to you, the diversity of the faculty and the staff and their interests and their expertise, to try to sample that and to keep your head up looking at all those opportunities. I like to tell people that when I went to social work school, I went there believing I would be a marriage and family counselor. I have not done 1 hour of counseling since I left graduate school, and I probably would not have been very, very good at it. So your interests may change, and the best way to look at that is to allow yourself to really be open to the experience. The other is, while we want you to do well with your coursework and we want you to read and study and so forth, is really take opportunity to get to know people and to build a network. Your training and your skills will qualify you for good jobs, but it's your network that will enable you to actually get them. And the faculty want to work with you on creating connections. So yeah, do the work, but really be engaged socially and in an informal way with as many people as you can in the school and outside the school in terms of our community.
I'll just piggyback on that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of this networking, I really think that in graduate school, one of the most important things you can get out of it is the networking, in addition to the skills and the knowledge, of course. But and that networking is not just about faculty, it's also about your peers. So we have a wonderful group of students who come in, again, with lots of experience, and so be open to that you'll be networking. We're here to provide those networking opportunities, but as you go out into the world, your peers are also going to be there. And then the other thing I would add is just to really make it what you want it to be. We have a curriculum set up, we have classes for you to take, but it is about you knocking on our doors and asking what opportunities we have for you. It is about you going out and reading extra material if that's what you want to do, or volunteering in the community, or volunteering in the global community, or working in the global community, what have you. Just because you're in graduate school doesn't mean you're not living. So I would say really make it what you want it to be.
So those are nice, big philosophical approaches. I'm going to give you a very tactical piece of advice for an incoming graduate student, and that is to get a time management system. All of the things that we want you to take advantage of, and the studying, and the learning, and the paper writing, if you really want to, kind of hit the ground running and remain, with a good sense of self-care and a good sense of sanity, find a system that works for you so that you can balance your time and kind of spread your time out in ways that allow you to sleep, that allow you to eat good meals, that allow you to get enough hydration during the day, but really just find a time management system that works for you. And between now and when you join us in the fall, practice with some different time management systems so that you can really land on one that works for you, because I think that will help you just really take full advantage of what we have to offer here.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thank you all. And thank you for tuning in and watching. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules. Absolutely. It's a busy time for us right now. We just got back from spring break, so it feels like go time, so I really appreciate it a lot. For those who asked questions but we didn't have time to get to them, please feel free to send those our way so we can answer them for you. We're going to leave you with some contact information at the end, so feel free to reach out to me directly. And also, be on the lookout for our next virtual info session, which is coming up April 17th, where we're going to talk about Practicum. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.